Sometimes it's tough to be the older sibling. When the baby arrives, attention is diverted, expectations shift, and sometimes your birthday is forgotten when your older half-sister decides to get married the same day. But we're here to talk about a Battlemech today and not hold a collective therapy session. The Crossbow story is one tied to both clan and intersphere history, going back to the earliest days of Battlemech construction. The often overlooked 65-ton clan Omnimech was a staple of clan Steel Viper machinations over the centuries, but its foundation was laid long before Nicholas Kerensky decided he was going to remake Civilization. Today we're going to dive into the fray and see if we can't make sense of these Battlemechs that share a name and a heritage. Stick around for Missiles and Mayhem. Amid the turmoil and tumult of battle, there may be seeming disorder, and yet no real disorder at all. Amid confusion and chaos, your army may be without head or tail, yet it will be immune to defeat. Simulated disorder demands perfect discipline. Simulated fear demands courage. Simulated weakness demands strength. Sun Tzu, Art of War. Without having to travel back to ancient China, the story of the crossbow begins long before the 65-ton Omnimech hit the scene. The original mech was designed several centuries before, with Arcturan arms planned to create a heavy frontline battlemech that could use missiles to soften up targets at a distance before closing in for kills with a variety of energy weapons. By the mid-25th century, the Battlemech had become the military tech belle of the ball, and every defense contractor wanted to wow buyers with their unique take on the machine. The Machian Commando were making a ton of money, and Arcturan arms wanted in on the action. The Crossbow CRS-X 60-ton prototype took advantage of brand new but still developing technologies like the 290 primitive fusion engine, which technically allowed the team to argue that the heavy mech was a fast cavalry option. Keep in mind that at the time, the 460 movement profile was considered fast. Just stick with me here. The primitive cockpit, standard gyro, 10 single heatsinks, and 11.5 tons of primitive armor rounded out the base machine, leaving 17 tons of remaining mass for weapons and ammunition. With the goal in mind of creating a machine that could take advantage of long-range missiles, 4 LRM-5 launchers were installed into the mech, split between the arms, and fed by 2 tons of ammunition. That's 12 shots per launcher if you're like me and went to public school and need a little help with the math. The LRM launchers were never intended to be doing the bulk of the damage. That honor was reserved for a right torso-mounted large laser and a pair of medium lasers split between the arms. What looked good on paper or even in controlled prototype testing did not translate to success for a myriad of reasons. Some were the typical bugs that were found in all new Battlemechs. Cooling jackets malfunctioned, ammo feeds jammed, and the arm-mounted long-range missile launchers were susceptible to targeting issues if just lightly jarred or damaged. The Lyran brass were pretty unimpressed by the crossbow's loadout, which underperformed in its ideal role. Fewer than a dozen of the CRS-X crossbows were produced before the project was sent back to development. As a consolation prize, Arcturan Arms was tapped to produce the heavier Banshee Battlemech, which proved to be a very successful Battlemech design. This was beneficial for the crossbow team as they were able to make tweaks to their mech using lessons picked up along the way with the Banshee. Ultimately, the Lyrans did end up finally awarding a long-term production contract for the crossbow, designated the CRS-6B in 2485. This production version of the Battlemech benefited from updated technology, including a larger 300 AA Eterna fusion engine and more powerful weaponry. The 580 movement profile made it much more competitive in its weight class, and the 8 tons of standard plate armor offered 128 points of protection, which matched other 60-ton mechs such as the Champion and Quickdraw that leaned into more offensive-oriented builds. Instead of going with 4 LRM-5s, the 6B carried 2 LRM-10s split between the arms, which simplified the ammo feed mechanisms and targeting for the mech, which had caused problems with the prototype design. The 2 standard medium lasers in the arms were left in place, but that large laser which had been giving the team so much trouble with the faulty cooling jacket was swapped out for an A4 Lightning series particle projection cannon. While many of the issues with the mech had been hammered out for the Crossbow 6B, the 10 single heat sinks were a significant limiting issue. Opportunity cost spares no one, remember? Running and gunning at range with the 2 LRM-10s was heat neutral, but firing the PPC at any point instantly maxes out the heat sinks, and any other action will send the crossbow into the red. Heat management became a series of trade-offs in the moment that punished the overall power of the Battlemech. Plans for the Crossbow 6B were ambitious, but faced the brutal reality of a cutthroat industrial environment. Delays, supply shortages, and possibly a bit of corporate sabotage limited production of the crossbow in its first few years. Most of the early mechs produced were directed to the Lyran Commonwealth's Royal Guard, which meant that most of the other units in the LCAF never saw a crossbow. Production issues plagued the crossbow assembly lines, and even after a few years, the mech was still not meeting contractual goals. The local economy on Arcturus fell apart when the Lyrans moved the capital world to Tharkad, and ultimately Arcturus Arms had to end production. By 2490, just 337 Crossbow 6Bs had been produced. While the crossbow was not permanently dead, it would take a half a millennium to return. The Guard's general frequency crackled to life, linking the remaining warriors of the cluster to Star Captain Detmar, who had assumed field command after Star Colonel Geoff Mercer's gargoyle had taken crippling damage, forcing him to eject.
Viper Guards, hold the line. We will not surrender a meter of ground to these filthy pigeons.
Raising both arms of his crossbow, Detmar punctuated his command with a launch of a flight of 40 missiles which crashed down among the Falcon line, sending a wave of fiery explosions rippling across an entire star of Omnimechs, the one-on-one dueling restrictions of Zelbriggen cast aside long ago. Runner, Shrapnel number 22 by Eric Salzman. Though the crossbow's story in the Inner Sphere was on pause until the 31st century, it became unexpected inspiration for a Clan Steel Viper Omnimech during the Golden Century. Not typically known for their creative scientist cast, the Steel Vipers had to collect a couple of scientists from Clan Snow Raven to create a pair of new Omnimechs designated the Battle Cobra and the Crossbow. While the 65-ton crossbow shared a few elements of the already antique 60-ton Inner Sphere design, it was definitely its own beast. With 5 additional tons of mass with which to play, the 325 New Kent Standard Fusion engine maintained the 580 movement profile from its cousin. 10 double heat sinks provided a good basis for the various configurations, and the 12 tons of standard compound V6 armor provided plenty of protection in comparison to the Inner Sphere crossbow's modest coverage. Once the gyro, cockpit, and electronics were installed, that left 16 tons of mass for pod space. This is a significant point of information for the crossbow because it's barely more than half of the mass found for other better-known heavy Omnimechs like the Mad Dog, Hellbringer, and Cauldronborn. The trade-off that limited the crossbow's pod space was durability. The standard 325 fusion power plant weighed in at 23.5 tons in comparison to the Hellbringer's 12-ton XL engine. So while the Hellbringer could bring a shocking amount of firepower to the battlefield, its 8 tons of armor and XL engine made for a delicate machine. Meanwhile, the more steady-as-she-goes design of the crossbow meant that it could take tremendous punishment and still be in the fight. It was also significantly less expensive than its XL engine and ferrofibrous toting peers. The comparatively low cost and ease of maintenance appealed to the Steel Vipers, who quickly put the crossbow into production. It was first deployed into combat in 2870 against the Smoke Jaguars in a trial of possession on the somewhat dense planet named Homer. I say dense because at 1.4 times Terra's gravity, operations on the planet were a challenge. The brand new crossbows proved very effective against the Smoke Jaguars, and the trial was reportedly over within an hour. From then on, the Steel Vipers were quite keen on their new Omnimech, and it was a common sight in their tumen, even among elite and command units. The primary configuration for the Crossbow leaned heavily into the missile theme by devoting all of the available pod space to a pair of long-range Missile 20 racks split between the arms and aided in their accuracy by Artemis IV fire control systems. The 4 tons of included ammunition put the configuration on a leash tied to nearby logistics lines for additional ammo. While obviously not able to compete in firepower with mechs like the Hellbringer, the Crossbow could provide valuable fire support at all ranges. The Prime configuration was the most commonly seen in the first centuries of the mech's existence. It was so popular that until the 31st century there were only 2 other official configurations. This is notable since most of the other Omnimechs from the Golden Century and onwards started with 4 or 5 before Operation Revival. The A configuration, which also debuted along with the mech, was a more balanced build that had basically 2 of everything. 2 LRM-5 launchers split between the arms provided their very modest long-range damage, while 2 medium pulse lasers and 2 Streak SRM-6 launchers, also set in the arms, generated the bulk of the possible harm. While it proved to be unpopular among clan mech warriors, the A configuration was more powerful and could remain on the battlefield for longer than the Prime. At short range, the potential Alpha Strike of 58 damage was not too shabby for only 16 tons of weaponry. Primarily useful in brawling and short-range combat, it's understandable that the more austere and proper clan warriors of the pre-invasion days would find the A configuration distasteful. The last of the original 2870 official configurations was the B, and it leaned even harder into short-range combat, with a loadout devoted entirely to 4 Streak SRM-6 launchers split between the arms and fed by 4 tons of ammunition. While abandoning all long-range weaponry defies the Crossbow's mission statement a bit, the potential of doing up to 48 damage worth of missile hits has to be considered. Sure, most of the time you're going to do about half of that, but it could be quite useful against light and medium mechs or already damaged heavies and assaults if you were crit hunting. Apparently the B configuration was used in dueling, though I question the value of it for that role. With 3 solid configurations under its belt, the Crossbow marched down the timeline toward its destiny. The last of the armor on the left arm fell away, and an exploding SRM blasted armor from the Battle Cobra's cockpit area. Finally, one of the missiles snapped the mech's right arm off, whirling its blackened skeleton and the sparkling remnant of a PPC. Back out of sight across the ravine, the Crossbow rained down on the Nodachi climbing up the hill toward it. The Crossbow's SRMs all locked on target and gouged armor from the Nodachi's arm, legs, and especially the already damaged right flank. A spray of LRMs flaked armor off the left flank and midline, but failed to open any holes. The twin pulse lasers raked armor away from the mech's right arm and pierced the right flank, melting cross members of the Nodachi's frame. Prince of Havoc by Michael A. Stackpole. While the Steel Viper's role in Operation Revival is one with a few twists and turns that we've covered in recent videos, the Crossbow was included in the fun, even if it was often overlooked and overshadowed by flashier and more powerful clan mechs. In fact, the savvy and skilled Khan of Steel Viper, Natalie Breen, deftly used her Crossbow in frequent challenges. Khan Breen reluctantly voted for participation in Operation Revival, but quickly proved the Steel Vipers were capable of keeping up with the other clans when they were called into the fray by IlClan Kerensky. The disappointing performance of the Steel Vipers on Tukayyid led to Khan Breen taking personal responsibility and resigning her Khanship, returning to her previous rank of Star Colonel. The Crossbow Prime A and B were spotted during the fight on Tukayyid, though only among the forces of the Steel Vipers, Jade Falcons, and Smoke Jaguar. Even by the 31st century, adoption of the design by other clans was limited, with most outside of the Steel Vipers seen among Clan Blood Spirits Tumen. Apparently, the primary appeal of the Crossbow for the Blood Spirits was its low cost. Is this the Geo Metro of Clan Omnimechs? Martha spotted the Viper warrior Samantha had mentioned, right in the middle of the fray. In a Crossbow, the pilot was currently working on the legs of a mad dog, shooting away more and more armor, exposing more and more of the myomer muscle structure beneath, rapidly shifting attention from one mech to another and sending them reeling. Martha flicked on the general comm line to address the enemy pilot. "This is Khan Martha Pride of the Jade Falcons. I would like to speak to the pilot of the Viper Crossbow." There was no response. all that could be heard on the comm line was a complex pattern of static. Falcon Rising by Robert Thurston. The next official configuration for the crossbow wouldn't hit the scene until 3061. The H-config is our obligatory heavy laser platform, as it features both a heavy large laser and a heavy medium laser in the right arm. The left arm was given an LRM-15 along with 2 tons of ammunition next to it. For close-range conflict resolution, 4 light machine guns were split evenly between the side torsos and fed by a half-ton of ammunition in the right torso. Just a reminder for all those who need it, all the clan Omnimechs come with standard case in the limbs and side torsos if there is ammunition present. To facilitate the use of the heavy lasers without instantly becoming hotter than a playground aluminum slide in July, 4 additional double heat sinks brought the H configuration's total to 14. The combination of LRM-15 and heavy lasers reminds me of the Inner Sphere crossbow's philosophy of being able to contribute something at all ranges. Of course, the clan LRM launchers are always a threat, and short range is where the H configuration shined. The large heavy laser does have an absolutely devastating 16 damage to a single location, and the medium adds its 10. The LRM-15 along with the light machine guns could serve the Mech well as crit-seeking hunters once the target has been cracked open. There is some heat management required, but it's pretty minimal. A full alpha strike on the run left the H config at 4 heat into the red. While I've never been crazy about heavy lasers, this build works as a short-range hunter of big targets. The caveat on that is that with the +1 to hit penalty on heavy lasers, the H configuration would have trouble with fast-moving targets. Now that the keg is tapped, just 2 years passed before the next configuration, designated the C. This version of the crossbow featured a pair of advanced tactical missile 6 launchers split between the arms and fed from 6 tons of ammunition. This was perfect for taking full advantage of the ATM's ability to fire those 3 different ammunition types. The left and right torso heavy machine guns provided very close violence, and each fed from 1 ton of ammunition in the right torso. Finally, an ECM suite was added to the right torso, making the C configuration our first Operation Sneaky Sneak crossbow of the day. Heat wasn't an issue for the C configuration, and of all the newer weapon systems, the ATM seems perfectly tailored to the crossbow's mission statement. While the damage output at long and medium range is modest, the close-range punch is considerable. The ECM aided in creating what I think is a very underrated configuration. I would be keen on seeing how a skilled Mechwarrior could take advantage of being underestimated on the battlefield. At first, Martha took the offensive. She used her LRMs to keep the crossbow pilot on the defensive as she moved in closer to work over its center torso with her autocannon. But the crossbow pilot, exhibiting more patience than most warriors would, countered with a devastating LRM barrage enhanced by its Artemis IV fire control systems that seriously slowed down Martha's attack. For a long while, the clash was a standoff, but one interrupted by remarkably accurate use of firepower on both sides. Falcon Rising by Robert Thurston. As tends to happen as we march further down the timeline, the official configurations for the classic Omnimechs tend to get a little weird. This is definitely the case with the Crossbow E, which arrives on the battlefield in 3072. Without a doubt, the intent for this niche configuration is anti-infantry, battle armor, and light vehicle duty, as it carries 16 anti-personnel Gauss rifles split evenly between the arms and aided in their accuracy by a center torso targeting computer. The rifles were fed by 6 tons of ammunition, and each shot could do 3 damage to an armored target and 2d6 damage to conventional infantry. Page 217 in the Total Warfare book if you're curious. Though initially a clan Jade Falcon development, the AP Gauss rifles quickly spread throughout the clans as an efficient way to rapidly deliver on-set heavy metal poisoning to squishy soldiers. If my public school math skills haven't failed me, a successful alpha strike against infantry would be 16 2d6 rolls, which is a potential 192 damage to the target. Now you might be thinking, Mechfrog, isn't that overkill? Well, do you really want to take that chance and have to come back for another shot to deal with the problem? Yeah, that's what I thought. Following the E config, we're taking a big leap down the timeline to 3116, where the crossbow was given yet another bite at the advanced tactical missile launcher apple. The configuration F leaned in on the tech with a pair of ATM-9 launchers split between the arms, backed up by a pair of ER medium lasers. The opportunity cost of the larger launchers was partially paid for by a reduction in the ammunition to just 2 tons per launcher. That's 14 shots of whatever ammo distribution you wanted, though without the full 6 tons, choices had to be made. Heat management is light, with the Alpha Strike on the run only resulting in 4 heat into the red. The F configuration's biggest limitation is the ammunition, which is going to limit the mech to short fights near resupply. While 14 shots per launcher will get you through a typical fight, ammo choice for the ATMs is going to make a big difference on outcomes. Choose wisely. The crossbow kicked out with its right foot at the Nodachi, catching it in the left arm. The mech's flat foot slammed into the combined mech's left arm, crushing all but the last of the armor on that limb. The Nodachi twisted around to the right, absorbing the damage from that blow, then brought its sword around and caught the clan mech behind the right knee. Armor shards flew as the blade bit deep. The crossbow tried to get the mech's left foot down to maintain the machine's balance, but the heel plowed a furrow through the loam and got no purchase. The crossbow pitched to the left and crashed to the earth. Prince of Havoc by Michael A. Stackpole. Our remaining crossbows were produced not from within the clan homeworlds, but on Arcturus, bringing us full circle to the beginning of our story. When Clan Wolf arrived in-system in 3128 to facilitate the transfer of ownership, one Mechwarrior, Andreas, ended up playing a crucial role in the conquering of the planet for the clan. At the time, crossbows were a rarity within the Wolf Tumen, so it's a convenient coincidence that Andreas was piloting one as the clanners sought to take over the planet with a functioning Inner Sphere crossbow production line. Don't worry, we'll get to the newer Inner Sphere crossbow in a bit. Battle reports show that Mechwarrior Andreas was in the thick of the fighting, burning through his cluster's supply of crossbow omnipods after surviving heavy damage in multiple engagements. This is a testament to the durability of the mech. Easy to punch, but hard to kill. Just my style. Initially, Andreas's mech was in the prime configuration, but eventually he had to use whatever was available to get back into the fray. His performance was admirable, and his codex reflected a full company worth of Lyran mech kills in the campaign before he was eventually killed by an unlucky Gauss rifle round to his cockpit. When the smoke cleared, Mechwarrior Andreas was honored both by a mention in the Clan Wolf Remembrance as well as the decision to retool the existing Inner Sphere crossbow production lines on Arcturus to produce the Clan Omnimech. Brand new crossbows would join the Wolf Tumen to honor the fallen warrior. The new Arcturan Omnimech crossbows arrived with a new official configuration in the same year as the fight for the planet. The W crossbow was a nod to the original Inner Sphere design, with a pair of LRM-10 launchers split between the arms backed up by a collection of energy weapons. The ERPPC in the right torso presented the biggest all-ranges threat, while the 2 medium improved heavy lasers split between the arms offered their blistering 10 damage out to 9 hexes. To partially address the heat issues, an 11th double heatsink was added. That'll do it. Alpha striking with the W configuration would be a sometimes treat, as it left the W config at 17 heat, which is less than ideal. More realistically, the ERPPC and LRM launchers would be the primary damage dealers, and by the time you were close enough to a target for the improved medium-heavy lasers, you're either out of LRM ammunition or swapping out their fire for the lasers. Alternatively, holding off on the ERPPC when close in favor of the 2 heavy mediums is also an option at very close range. Overall, the W configuration is a mean fighter anywhere you run into it on the battlefield. I think you could make the case that it does the job better than most if not all of the previous official configs. If you disagree, please let me know. In 3136, the Wolves took another bite at the apple with the Crossbow G config. The G was an interesting, if somewhat less than intimidating attempt to highlight the Streak long-range missile tech. 6 Streak LRM-5s were set into the mech's arms and fed from 4 tons of arm-mounted ammunition. While the total potential damage is 30, higher than usual due to the nature of Streak technology, you still have to achieve lock 6 times. With the limited damage and ammunition reliance, the Crossbow G stands as a functional, if niche, configuration. It's nice to have, but I doubt I would take it over any other options in all but the most tailored of circumstances. When Clan Wolf became the Wolf Empire and migrated further into the Inner Sphere, Arcturus briefly became an independent planet before the Jade Falcons reasserted clan control in 3142. Never a dull moment on Arcturus, am I right? The next official configuration for the crossbow was spotted that same year, designated the Crossbow J. This interesting attempt to find a new way to rearrange the deck chairs abandoned missiles entirely in favor of an all-energy weapon loadout. Such heresy. The J's primary weapon was most definitely the large improved heavy laser in the right arm, which could reach out to 15 hexes for 16 damage without any accuracy penalty thanks to the improved status. Additionally, 9 ER small lasers were set into the left arm, and a center torso mounted supercharger could push the movement profile of the crossbow up to 5-10-0 when needed. Of course, the most attractive aspect of the Jade Falcon version of the crossbow was the addition of talons to the left and right legs, giving the mech the ability to lash out for 20 points of kicking damage to a target. Not too shabby. Heat generation for the J config isn't an issue unless you're at close range and employing the ER small lasers. Of course, in that situation, the Alpha Strike with the heavy large laser could easily be worth going deep into the red if it meant putting an awkward opponent down for good. Without any ammunition to worry about, there's some leeway in more reckless behavior. Of course, because the late Dark Age era mechs just can't be normal for 5 minutes, the most recent crossbow official configuration is one which is quite unique. The T configuration's primary weaponry consisted of a pair of ER large lasers split between the arms. Okay, that's a first for this design. Backing them up at short range, the rest of the arm critical hit locations were devoted to improved single-shot SRM-2s and SRM-6s. 14 of the SRM-2s and 2 of the SRM-6s to be exact. Finally, a light active probe along with 2 additional double heat sinks polished off the loadout. Without any in-universe explanation for what the purpose of this configuration is beyond the IlClan Rec Guide's Skirmisher label, I struggle to understand why you would go this route with the crossbow. Just the ER large lasers make the mech a somewhat weak long-range operator, but at short range those iOS SRMs are just a big gamble and it doesn't seem to be very realistic. You could doll out those SRMs in small batches, but after a few shots the minimal damage becomes non-existent and you're back to relying upon the 2 lasers. The light active probe could suggest a hunter of ECM units, but neither the lasers or the SRMs lean into that role of a light mech consumer. I'm a bit befuddled on this one, folks. If you have a theory, please let me know how you would use the T configuration to maximize it on the battlefield. Now, before I take a crack at creating my own custom crossbow configuration, we do need to take a step back and look at one more variant. Since we began with the Inner Sphere Age of War crossbow, it seems fitting to finish with the newest attempt to update that design. In 3071, the Arcturan Arms production line that would eventually be claimed by the Wolves started to produce a new version of the crossbow designated the CRS-9A. It retained much of the 6B's structural elements but benefited from upgraded double heat sinks and 11 tons of ferrofibrous armor. Starting at long range, the right torso-mounted ER large laser was the primary threat, with the rest of the loadout being focused on mid and short-range shenanigans. The 2 ER medium lasers and paired streak SRM-6s split between the arms offered a potential 34 damage once the crossbow was close enough to its prey. Heat management is a thing, but only when wielding that ER large laser like an irresponsible child with a high lumen flashlight. While not immediately recognizable as a rockstar Battlemech at a glance, the Crossbow 9A checked a lot of boxes for a solid and reliable machine. Without an expensive XL engine or endosteel, the 9As could be produced quickly and, most importantly for the Lyrans, cheaply. Unfortunately, due to the conquest of Arcturus, the 9A's production line became a clan crossbow line, so those who operate the 9A may have trouble finding replacement parts as we trudge further into the IlClan era. Of course, my unrestrained hubris and ego can't let anything go without adding my 2 cents, so I took a crack at creating my very own totally unofficial and non-canon clan crossbow configuration. I stuck to the theme of durable quality producer and added 4 advanced tactical missile 3 launchers split between the arms, fed by a total of 6 tons of ammunition. Going with the ATM-3s instead of the 2 ATM-6s buys us a ton of mass for use elsewhere. Plus it adds a little more flexibility to what gets fired when and at who. For close-up conflict de-escalation, 3 micro-pulse lasers offered their reliable pestering damage. 1 was placed in each arm and the 3rd became an emotional support laser in the open-head critical location. Finally, a supercharger in the center torso improves the mech's ability to quickly close on the target to unleash those high-explosive ATM rounds when the time is right. I think the Crossbow MF fits the original theme of the mech while taking advantage of the ATM technology and other new tech. While the overall damage is limited, the long-term threat is not, since the mech can take large amounts of incoming fire without being taken out of the action. The combination of high explosive ATM ammunition and the supercharger is a match made in heaven, or Butte Hold if you want an in-universe paradise. If you're up for giving the MF configuration a try, I've included the record sheet and Alpha Strike card for it in the video notes below. Let me know how it does. So why do we love the crossbow? Both of them. As far as the Inner Sphere crossbow goes, I appreciate the effort that was made in creating a heavy mech that was outside the norm. We love our generalist battlemechs on this channel, and the CB definitely fits the bill, especially the A9, which is a solid brawling machine. As far as the clan crossbow stomps, the 16 tons of pod space makes it easy to dismiss as a less viable option in comparison to other Omnimechs like the Cauldronborn, Hellbringer, or Mad Dog. However, when you dig in under the hood and recognize the value of the crossbow's durability, it presents a refreshing option in a clan force. The most recent lore of the mech suggests the crossbow is still being produced on Arcturus, though no longer under the control of Clan Jade Falcon. A rebellion on the world wiped out the remaining Falcons who were left behind on Malvina's drive toward Terra, and for a year it was on its own. Eventually, the 26th Arcturian Guards jumped into the system and established a more legitimate government, or something that can pass as one. The Tamar Pact now controls the planet and presumably the production lines on it. The future of the Clan Tech crossbow remains up in the air as we move into the IlClan era. I'm curious what you think. Did you know about the Inner Sphere crossbow? Do you have a clan crossbow configuration that you think is best in show? Let me know in the comments and we'll keep the discussion going. Thanks as always for coming out today. If you think the video deserves it and want to show your support, the easiest way to do that is to hit the like button, subscribe, and even leave a comment. All of those things make the YouTube algorithm happy. If you want to go one step further, direct support through Ko-fi or the YouTube channel memberships are a great way to help ensure the nonsense keeps flowing. I can't do this without you, and I appreciate it. If you'd like to join the nonsense on the MechFrog Discord server, we'd love to see you. I've included a link to the server in the video notes. It's the best way to find out what's coming up next week, talk to BattleTech fans, share your awesome mech paint jobs, and otherwise hang out with some pretty amazing people. With that, I'll say have a great week, take care of yourself and others, and go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.